Welcome once again to Forecast Lab. You can see that things in the tropics are getting a little bit unsettled. Let's take a look out there in the Atlantic. Typically in the Gulf of Mexico and the southwestern Atlantic, the first week of September has the hottest sea surface temperatures. So tropical cyclones are a big concern this time of year. Franklin will move to the north, expected to grow into a Category 2 storm, but remain offshore. This, however, we're watching, expected to have an impact on Florida as we go into early next week. Here's where we're at with the climate indicators. Nothing much to talk about. Everything close to neutral, and the Madden-Julian oscillation is forecast to become indeterminate. So we're going to focus on the dynamic picture. And here's what we're looking at with the weather picture this afternoon. A polar front moving into the Midwest region and the central U.S., the tail end caught in the Continental Divide region. We do have a slight risk of thunderstorms for central Illinois this afternoon along a weak cold front. Warm temperatures bringing those capes up to 4,000. However, the decapes are rather high, so the storms will tend to be a little bit outflowish, and wind is the main threat. Marginal risk extends into Maryland and Virginia. And off the northeastern coast, the remnants of Hillary, that's the tropical storm that affected California this past Sunday. That's it right there, kind of joined up with this frontal system just ahead of this warm front. And we also have a marginal risk up in the UP of Michigan. What is the UP of Michigan? That's the Upper Peninsula. That's that region right here. People that live there, they're called Upers. A little bit of trivia. Anyway, those storms developing along this secondary cold front environment in that region is highly sheared, but we're talking straight line shear, so the tornado risk will be minimal. But we will get some storm organization along that decaying front. In the southeastern U.S., all eyes are on Tropical Storm Franklin, which is way off the edge of the screen, kind of in this region right there. Anyway, that's going to stay well off to the east. And of course, following that, we're going to shift our attention south as Invest 93L moves north and approaches somewhere in this area. We'll take a look at the model charts momentarily. Elsewhere around the country, excessive heat warnings continue across a massive area, from Houston all the way to Omaha, from Wichita to Cincinnati, down to Memphis, down to New Orleans, that entire area, anywhere along those lines under a excessive heat warning. And when we say excessive heat warning, that means it's hot even by local standards for this time of year. Flood watch is in effect for the eastern Colorado plains as that moisture field from the remains of Harold move across that region. The flood watch is along and northwest of a line from Pueblo to Lyman and up to Goodland, and that includes the Denver area as well. You can see those precip symbols for rain and thunderstorms from Denver to Akron. Precipitable water in that area running 150 to 200% of the normal values, and some frontal convergence and frontal lift in the Sangre de Cristo areas right through here that could boost the precip up above 1 inch. In the southwestern U.S., a hot day once again, 107 earlier this afternoon at Phoenix. Excessive heat warnings in effect for the lower deserts, including Phoenix, Yuma, Lake Havasu City, Kingman, Imperial, and Lake Mead. Tucson is not in that warning, but they are under a watch. In the northwestern U.S., red flag advisories in the Cascades, few showers and storms up there in the higher elevations, dry, unstable conditions, gusty winds, and of course, those possible lightning strikes, those could spark a few fires up there in the mountains. Little frontal system off the west coast, not doing very much. And heading up north into Alaska, a strong frontal system around Nome, all the way up towards the Brooks Range. Temperatures down quite a bit from a couple weeks ago. And as we head east into the Canadian high Arctic, this is a potent Canadian polar air mass up there around Victoria Island. And that's colder than anything we've seen so far this month. You can see those thickness values down to 516 decameters, which is very low. All of the blue lines, those are indicating where frozen or freezing precipitation forms are possible. So anywhere north of Inuvik, north of Cambridge Bay, and even north of, there's a lot of cold air coming all the way down into the northern part of Quebec. But down to the south, the smoke and wildfire conditions continue, still running in the 80s around Yellowknife, so the risks in that region are not quite over.
But remember, you get to watch truck driving live as it happens. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And the Lornas, and stealing food, and the Wampus cats, and all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, that's a look at Big Rig Steve's stream. Always interesting because he's got a great view of the sky from that truck. And we see some stratocumulus up there. This is in northeastern Indiana. You can see it's a little bit high-based, maybe up at about 5,000 feet or so, maybe a little higher. Let's take a look at the weather map in that area. Big Rig Steve is very generous with letting us use his video, so I do appreciate that. He's up in this area right here. Temperatures right around 79 or 80, north wind, a little bit of cold air advection, and probably some frontal lift back behind this cold front. And I think Fort Wayne is going to be his closest station, 3,500 and 13,000 for the clouds. And we can check around some of the other sites and kind of confirm that. Yeah, there's a few very low layers down at 2,500 up there at Goshen. Anyway, closer to where I'm at, excuse me, my voice is breaking up a little bit. Yeah, we're up to 107, 108. Yeah, this is just awful summer. We are going to see some relief around here as we go into next week. Don't know how long that's going to last, but we'll take any relief that we can get. Yeah, the hottest temperature, that appears to be Corsicana with 108. And, looking around there, Waco also 108. So let's take a look at the tropics. There's Franklin, just north of the Dominican Republic. Hasn't moved very much. It is moving kind of to the northeast. Expected to become a hurricane by early Sunday. Probably get up to Category 2. Let's run that forward. So that's going to be about Sunday, intensifying and becoming a hurricane. And this is the other area we're watching. That's going to be Invest 93L. Currently, let me back that up, just east of Belize, somewhere out there in the Caribbean, gradually coming together. And if that develops quickly, that should become Tropical Storm Idalia. There's a couple other disturbances out here that could become named storms, but if that happens, this would be Jose instead. But currently, it looks like it probably will be Idalia, but I'm not going to bet money on that. But you can see what happens as we go into Monday and Tuesday, drifting north into the Gulf of Mexico. This is the GFS forecast. The European model runs a little bit more like this. So there is some differences between the two models, and we can't quite resolve that this early. This is one potential scenario. Deterministic models like the GFS and European model like this one are one of many possible scenarios. So with the GFS going more westerly, the European model going more easterly. And there goes Franklin, pretty far offshore, no problems for the northeastern U.S. Anyway, at some point, that tropical cyclone will move inland around midweek and probably produce some extensive rains in the Appalachians and the Piedmont region. So we'll just have to see about that. And then looking out into the Atlantic, another weather system coming together. It's a pretty well-defined wave. About 1 week from now, that drifts westward. That's the latest frame that we have, but that could drift somewhat like that. We're looking at certainly September 6th or 7th before that starts approaching the U.S. So there's quite a bit of time before we have to be concerned with this one. So let's take a look at the short-term forecast. Here's what we have going on right now. There's that front sinking into the central U.S. A lot of rain associated with the remains of Harold across Colorado. And as we move into tomorrow, There's the overnight hours. A lot of precipitation moving into Kansas overnight along the Interstate 70 corridor. A couple other convective areas moving into the Ohio River Valley. Then we get up to about dawn, and then midday on Saturday. You can see that cold front making some progress all the way down into the Texas Panhandle and down into Colorado. Highs tomorrow expected to be 73 at Denver, 77 at Dodge City, 71 at Goodland. Contrast that with 93 at Amarillo and 100 at Oklahoma City. It's also going to be warm in the northeastern U.S., up to 83 at New York City, 89 at Washington, D.C., 85 at Columbus. But those temperatures will tumble as we go into Sunday with another cold air mass moving out of Ontario. And in the northwestern U.S., another hot day up to 95 at Portland, 88 at Seattle for tomorrow, and 88 at Spokane. And the temperatures will be much the same for Sunday and Monday. Then going into Sunday, more of that cold air continues to move south. Little convective weather system moving into Tulsa, Springfield, Chanute. And it will be another cool day for Kansas, lots of 70s as that cold air mass continues moving south. For Monday, our attention shifts to the West Coast. It is going to be a hot one in California and Arizona. Temperatures up to 100 in the inland regions of Los Angeles, Riverside, Ontario, and it will be the hottest day of the week also in Arizona, up to 112 at Phoenix. And in Texas, looks like that cold air mass stalls out right along the Red River. So not much relief anywhere further south. This will show you the pressure and thickness going into next week. There comes that system out of the Gulf of Mexico, GFS taking that westerly, the European models we mentioned going further east. And there goes Franklin way out off into the Atlantic Ocean. And that's how things look around Thursday and Friday. Some cold air up to the north, but not really coming south. Here's the current 500 millibar chart. This is in the mid-levels of the troposphere. Subtropical highs centered across Oklahoma, so no wonder conditions are hot there. You can see that high backs off into Arizona going into Monday and Tuesday. That's when we get that really hot weather out there in California and Arizona. And then as this trough develops over the Great Lakes region, part of it shears off according to the GFS. See that right there over Missouri, kind of opens up and maybe a little low starting around Tuesday evening. And that's kind of a problem because we don't know how that's going to interact with the new tropical cyclone coming inland. There could be a little Fujiwara effect, or the tropical cyclone may get picked up by that troughing. And at the same time, we don't know how this is going to affect the weather in Texas and Louisiana. The European model brings that more into the western Gulf. So a lot of questions for next week, and we'll just have to look at this on Monday. Anyway, some interesting weather coming up for next week, no question about that. And that's all for this edition of Forecast Lab. I want to thank our many Patreon supporters, people like Rebecca Marks, Kelly Miller, Jason Walls, Jesse Newsom, Oat Maelstrom, Michael O'Neill. All of you, thank you very much for your support. Also, I'm going to leave you with some footage taken by Greg in the Texas Hill Country last night, showing some views of the residual moisture from Tropical Storm Harold, and a drone crash. Fortunately, the drone is fine, but it will go on to take some more excellent weather footage, so watch for that crash coming up. We'll see you on Monday for the supporters and Wednesday for everybody else. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.